It always begins quietly. No alarms, no headlines, just a line of data sliding across a screen in a dark room. Somewhere on Earth, an automated telescope is doing what it does every night, scanning the sky, frame by frame, pixel by pixel, looking for anything that doesn't belong. At first, this object doesn't look special. It's faint, fast, cold. A small point of light drifting against a backdrop of stars that have been there for billions of years. To the software, it's routine. Another moving body, another line in a catalogue. So it's given a temporary label, logged and quietly stored away. But before the night is over, something feels off. The object is moving a little too fast. Not dangerously fast, just enough to make one astronomer lean closer to the screen. Fast-moving objects are common. Comets pass through all the time. Asteroids cross paths with planets more often than people realize. This should be no different, except its angle is wrong. Instead of following the gentle, flat paths most objects take, this one cuts across the solar system at a steep tilt, entering the ecliptic like it doesn't care about the rules. The data is checked again. Then again, maybe it's a glitch, a timing error, a bad frame. Those things happen. So the astronomer does what scientists always do. They ask for more data. Within hours, other observatories are pointed toward the same patch of sky. Different instruments, different countries, different eyes. And still, the object is there. Same speed, same path. Real. Now it has attention. Not excitement, just awareness. Because in science, true discoveries don't shout, they whisper. As the tracking continues, numbers begin to stack up. Distance, velocity, brightness. The object is faint, but not fading the way it should. Most natural bodies change brightness as they tumble, as dust spreads, as sunlight hits uneven surfaces. This one doesn't. Its reflectivity holds steady, almost disciplined. Not smooth, not chaotic. Controlled. No one says that out loud yet. They don't need to. There's a moment every scientist knows, when curiosity shifts into something heavier. A moment where you realize the data is no longer answering questions, it's asking them. The object is logged again, still labeled as routine, but now there's a note attached. Unusual trajectory. Just 2 words, but they carry weight. As the hours pass, orbital models are run. Thousands of simulations, each one trying to predict where this object came from. And that's when the silence in the room deepens, because the models don't agree. Some paths suggest it came from deep space, far beyond the outer planets. Others hint at something stranger, a route that doesn't line up with known reservoirs of comets or debris. It's like trying to trace footprints, only to realize they don't point anywhere familiar. One researcher leans back in their chair. Another rubs tired eyes. No one panics, but no one relaxes either. The object doesn't behave badly. It doesn't flare. It doesn't break apart. It doesn't scream danger. It simply exists, moving through space with quiet confidence. And that might be the most unsettling part. Because chaos is easy to understand. Order is not. By morning, internal messages begin to circulate. Nothing dramatic, nothing official. Just simple questions. Has anyone seen this before? Does this match known profiles? Can someone double-check the light curve? The light curve. That's where the object tells its story, how its brightness changes over time. It's supposed to be messy, Nature rarely repeats itself perfectly. But this curve, it's clean, not perfectly flat, not perfectly random, balanced, as if the object knows exactly how much light to give and when. The phrase data anomaly appears for the first time, not in a report, not in a paper, in a private note. An anomaly doesn't mean impossible. It means unexplained, and unexplained things demand patience. The object is now officially being watched. Still no press release. Still no public interest. Just scientists and screens, and a growing feeling that this arrival is different. Someone asks a simple question. If this is natural, why does it feel intentional? No one answers. Because intention is not a scientific term, and yet it lingers in the air. As night falls again, telescopes continue to track the object's steady glide. It doesn't wobble. It doesn't hesitate. It moves like it knows exactly where it's going, like it has done this before. Far away from the noise of Earth, beyond politics and headlines, beyond belief and disbelief, something has entered our neighborhood, quietly, precisely. And for the first time, the people watching the sky aren't asking, what is it made of? They're asking something far more unsettling. Why is it here? And this is only the beginning. Chapter 2. A path that shouldn't exist as calculations refine its orbit. Scientists realize the trajectory defies probability, slicing through the solar system at the wrong angle. Was this path shaped by chaos? At first, the numbers don't scare anyone. They never do. They arrive quietly. Lines of math, orbital plots, slow-moving graphs drifting across screens. This is the part scientists trust the most, because numbers don't imagine. They don't guess. They don't panic. They only describe reality. And reality, at first glance, says this object should not be here. As more observations come in, the orbit begins to sharpen. Uncertainty fades. Margins shrink. The path becomes clear. And that's when the room changes. Because the trajectory doesn't settle into something familiar. It cuts, not gently, but decisively. Most objects in our solar system follow a shared memory. They move in roughly the same plane. A flat, invisible disk shaped by the sun's gravity over billions of years. Planets, asteroids, comets, they all learned the same dance. This object didn't. Its path slices through that disk at a steep angle, like a blade passing through glass, not drifting in, not captured. Passing through, someone overlays its orbit with known comet paths. No match. They compare it to long-period comets, those wild visitors from the outer darkness. Still no fit. The inclination is wrong. The approach vector is wrong. The timing is wrong. Statistically, this path borders on impossible. Not impossible in theory, impossible in practice. To arrive here like this, at this angle, at this speed, it would require a chain of coincidences stacked perfectly on top of each other. Gravitational nudges, stellar flybys, ancient disturbances, all aligning just so. Once? Maybe. But the probability is thin, uncomfortably thin. A researcher redraws the orbit, this time running the simulation backward. They want to know where it came from. The screen fills with fading lines, the path unraveling into the past. And then it happens. The trail doesn't lead anywhere meaningful. It doesn't point cleanly back to a known source. It doesn't settle into a cloud or cluster. It simply disappears into uncertainty, as if the object refuses to be traced, as if it doesn't want an origin. Someone breaks the silence. This doesn't look natural. The words hang there. Not accused, not defended, just observed. They try again. Different models. Different assumptions. They include every known gravitational influence. Planets, the sun, even passing stars from ancient charts. Still, the same result. A path that makes no sense. A trajectory that ignores expectations. The object isn't following the solar system. It's intersecting it, passing through like a visitor who never planned to stay. That realization lands slowly because it changes the story. If this object is native, it should belong. If it's captured, there should be signs. But if it's neither, then it's something else entirely. And that thought is quietly unsettling. Not because of danger, but because of meaning. One scientist notices something subtle. The path isn't chaotic, it's clean. Smooth. No wild swings, no random slingshots. Just a precise line through space, threaded between gravitational wells with almost graceful accuracy. That's not how chaos behaves. Chaos is messy. This is elegant. Another scientist counters quickly. Elegance doesn't mean intent. They're right. Nature can be beautiful without purpose. But still, no one relaxes. Because elegance, paired with improbability, raises questions. And questions multiply fast. They calculate how close the object passes to planetary orbits. Not dangerously close, but close enough to notice. Close enough to feel aware. It threads the solar system like a needle, missing collisions by margins that feel deliberate. Someone laughs nervously. Lucky, they say. But luck has a look, and this doesn't look like luck. As the days pass, the orbit becomes official, refined, confirmed, published quietly in internal databases. Still routine on paper, but no longer routine in feeling. The path doesn't change. It never wobbles. It never deviates. It's locked, like it was set long ago. One observer stares at the projection late at night, long after the others leave. The room is dark except for the glow of the screen. The sun sits at the center. Planets arc gracefully around it, and cutting through them all is that line. Cold. Straight. Unbothered. It doesn't spiral inward like a comet seeking warmth. It doesn't linger. It enters, and it will leave. And suddenly, the word visitor feels too small. Visitors come by chance. This feels like a crossing, a transit, as if something is moving from one place to another, and we just happen to be in the way. No alarms are raised. No statements are made. Because science moves carefully. But internally, the tone has shifted. This is no longer about cataloguing debris. It's about understanding behavior. Because paths tell stories. They reveal history. They hint at forces we can't see. And this path tells a story that doesn't belong to us. The object continues on its course, silent, unresponsive, unaffected, and somewhere in the calculations, a quiet question takes root. If this path wasn't shaped by chaos, then what shaped it? Gravity? Chance? Or something that understood the map? Long before we ever did, the numbers don't answer. They only confirm one thing. This object is not lost. It is not wandering. It is going somewhere. And as it moves deeper into the solar system, closer to the sun, closer to our instruments, the discomfort grows. Because paths like this don't happen by accident. And if intention exists out there, then this was never just a discovery. It was an arrival. And the next dataset will only make that harder to ignore. As the object moves closer to the sun, the mood shifts. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just a slow tightening in the chest of everyone watching. Because this is the point where nature usually reveals itself. Perihelion, the closest approach to the sun, the moment when fragile things fail. For comets, perihelion is violence. Ice cracks, gases explode outward, dust tears free in long glowing tails. They brighten, they scream, they fall apart. That's the rule. So the models are run again. Heat absorption, solar radiation, structural stress. The predictions are clear. This object should not survive intact. Not at this distance, not at this speed. Not with its size and composition estimates. At the very least, it should change. But as perihelion approaches, nothing happens. No sudden flare. No growing coma. No tail stretching behind it like a warning flag. Just the same small point of light, steady, contained. Almost peaceful. Someone jokes under their breath. Maybe it's tougher than we thought. But toughness has limits, and the sun does not negotiate. The object crosses a threshold. Radiation increases sharply. Temperatures spike beyond what loosely bound material can handle. This is where cracks should form. This is where chaos should begin. Instead, the brightness barely shifts. The light curve stays smooth, controlled. As if the object is prepared. Infrared data arrives next. This is where things get uncomfortable. Because heat isn't just about light, it's about response. Natural bodies absorb heat unevenly. They heat fast, cool slowly, and radiate unpredictably. This object doesn't. Its thermal pattern changes in steps. Small rises, then pauses, then rises again. Not smooth, not random, measured, like something adjusting. One observer whispers what everyone else is thinking. It's not reacting. That's not quite right. It is reacting, just not the way it should. The sun looms larger now. A massive wall of energy. Solar wind intensifies. Charged particles slam into the object's surface. This should strip material away. This should erode it. But the structure holds. No fragmentation, no shedding, no sign of distress. It passes perihelion intact. And for a few long seconds, no one speaks. Because this isn't just unexpected. It's wrong. Someone rechecks the distance. Someone rechecks the calibration. Someone quietly hopes for an error. Because errors are comforting. Errors mean the universe still makes sense, but the numbers don't change. The object didn't just survive perihelion. It ignored it. The data begins to circulate more widely now. Still not public, still careful, but the language changes. Words like robust appear, then unusual, then unexplained stability. A senior researcher leans forward during a review call. Even metallic asteroids show surface changes at this range. This one didn't. Another adds quietly. unless it's not what we think it is. No one responds, because once that door opens, it doesn't close easily. They look closer at reflectivity. At certain angles, the object darkens. At others, it brightens, not erratically, predictably, as if its surface is managed. The idea feels dangerous, so they retreat to safer explanations. Maybe it's denser, maybe it's older, maybe its composition is rare. But none of those answers fit cleanly, because even rare things obey physics. And this behavior sits just outside the lines. Late at night, one astronomer watches the data stream alone. The object drifts past the sun. Not glowing, not burning, just passing. Like it knows this moment means nothing. Like it has crossed brighter stars before. That thought lingers longer than it should, because age implies history, and history implies purpose. The sun begins to fall behind it now. Perihelion has passed, and still the object remains unchanged. No visible damage, no signs of stress, no scars. It's as if the most extreme test in the solar system meant nothing. Someone finally says it out loud. Why isn't it breaking apart? The question is simple. The answer is not. Because if this object is natural, then our models are missing something fundamental. And if it's not natural, then this moment matters far more than anyone wants to admit. The room fills with quiet speculation. No one uses forbidden words. No one says machine. No one says artificial. But those ideas sit just beneath the surface, unspoken, heavy, because machines are built to endure. Machines regulate. Machines anticipate stress. And this object anticipated the sun that destroys worlds. The data review ends without conclusions, only notes, only questions, only that growing sense that the universe has stopped following the script. Outside, the night sky looks the same. Stars blink softly. Planets move on schedule. Nothing appears different. But somewhere beyond sight, something has passed through fire and emerged, unchanged. And for the first time since its detection, the doubt is no longer quiet. It's no longer a whisper. It's a presence. Because survival like this isn't random. It's not lucky. It's intentional. Or it's a message we don't yet understand. As the object moves away from the sun, cooling without damage, holding its shape, a new realization takes hold. Perihelion was supposed to be the test, the moment it failed. Instead, it was the moment we did. And whatever this object truly is, it has just proven one thing. We don't know it as well as we thought. And the next observations will only make that truth harder to escape. At first, no one notices it, because light curves are boring. They're the background noise of astronomy, endless graphs rising and falling. Small changes caused by spin, dust, shadow, messy, imperfect, natural. That's what everyone expects. So when the data comes in after perihelion, it's treated the same way. Just another routine check. Just another confirmation that the object is fading as it moves away from the sun. But then someone zooms in and the room gets quiet, because the light curve isn't messy. It isn't chaotic. It's clean. Too clean. Instead of random flicker, the brightness rises, drops, then rises again. At first glance, it could still be nothing. A coincidence. A strange rotation. A trick of angles. But the pattern repeats. Once, twice, Again, same spacing, same depth, same timing. Light curves aren't supposed to do that. Natural objects tumble. They wobble. They expose rough surfaces, jets of gas, uneven shadows. Even smooth asteroids produce noise. This one doesn't. Its reflectivity changes in steps, almost like switches. On. Off. On again. Not flashing wildly. Measured, deliberate. Someone clears their throat. Run it again. The data is reprocessed. Different filters, different assumptions. Same result. The curve holds, a repeating sequence etched into light. Now the questions begin. Is it rotating? If so, the rotation is strangely consistent. No drift, no wobble, just a steady rhythm. They calculate the rotation period. It's precise. Too precise. Not rounded by chance, but locked, as if something is maintaining it. Another graph appears. Reflectivity versus angle. The surface behaves differently, depending on how it's viewed. Not gradually. Abruptly, as though sections of the object respond differently to light, and only at certain moments. Someone whispers a word no one likes to hear in science. Artificial. The room doesn't react, because no one wants that word on record, so they retreat to safer ground. Maybe it's layered. Maybe it's hollow. Maybe it's coated in unfamiliar material. All possible, all unsatisfying, because even exotic materials scatter light. They don't organize it. The pattern continues, over hours, over days. Always the same, like a heartbeat that never speeds up, never slows down. Not alive, but not random either. A junior analyst overlays the light curve with time markers, seconds, minutes. The peaks align. Exactly. Not drifting, not slipping. That's when discomfort turns into something heavier, because time alignment is rare. Nature is sloppy with time. This isn't. Someone leans back and exhales. If this were a signal, they stop themselves. No one finishes the sentence. Because signals imply senders, and senders imply awareness. Still, the word hangs in the air. Signal. They don't want it to be that, so they try to break the pattern. They wait. They expect degradation as the object moves farther away. Lower resolution. More noise. But even as the signal weakens, the pattern remains. Fainter, but intact. Like a message, whispered instead of spoken. The idea forms slowly. What if this isn't light being reflected? What if it's being controlled? Reflectivity isn't just brightness, it's behavior. How a surface chooses to interact with energy. Natural surfaces don't choose. They respond. This feels different. This feels selective. Someone suggests the pattern might be coincidental, a resonance of rotation and observation. The math is done. The odds are thin, very thin. Not impossible, but uncomfortable. Uncomfortably precise. They compare it to known objects. Asteroids, comets, even space debris. Nothing matches. Every comparison fails, because everything else is noisy. This is quiet, structured, intentional looking, even if no one wants to say that out loud. Late in the evening, one scientist stays behind. The lab is dim. Only the screens glow. The light curve pulses softly. Up, down, up. It feels wrong to stare at it too long, like eye contact. The human brain is good at seeing patterns where none exist. Everyone knows that. But this isn't pareidolia. This isn't faces in clouds. This is math, repeated, verified, independent. A message arrives from another observatory. They see it too. Different instruments, different location, same curve, same rhythm. That's when the isolation breaks. This isn't a single lab's problem anymore. It's global. Quietly global. No headlines, no alerts. Just scientists realizing they're all looking at the same thing, and none of them can explain it. The phrase broken light curve appears in a private note. Not broken like damaged, broken like rules, like something stepped outside expectation and didn't ask permission. The object continues on its path, unchanged, unconcerned, its brightness pulsing gently, almost politely, not screaming, not hiding, just present. And that might be the strangest part. If this were a beacon, it's a subtle one. If it were camouflage, it's imperfect. If it were nothing, then nature has learned a new trick. And no one knows which answer is worse. One final graph is generated before the night ends. Brightness over distance. The curve should decay smoothly. It doesn't. It flattens, then dips, then flattens again. As if the object decides when to fade. As if it controls how visible it wants to be. The scientist saves the file, closes the program, and sits in silence. Because this chapter of the story is no longer about motion or heat. It's about behavior. And behavior suggests rules. Rules suggests design. Design suggests purpose. And purpose changes everything. The object drifts onward. Its light still pulsing faintly against the dark. No explanation offered. No answers given. Only a pattern hanging in space, waiting to be understood. And somewhere deep in the data, a question refuses to stay buried. Is this just a broken light curve? Or is it the first time something out there has noticed us watching? The next chapter will make that question impossible to ignore. It starts as a coincidence. That's how everyone wants it to be. A small rise in brightness, then a fall, then another rise. Nothing dramatic, just a pulse. But then it happens again. Same timing, same spacing. Different telescope, different continent. The coincidence tightens. Because coincidences don't repeat themselves this cleanly. Not across oceans, not across instruments built by different teams, calibrated differently, watching from different angles of Earth. And yet, the pulse is there, quiet, steady, unmistakable. At first, the data comes in hours apart. One observatory flags a strange rhythm in the brightness curve. Another notices the same thing later that night. A third confirms it before dawn. The messages are careful. No excitement, no bold claims. Just questions. Are you seeing this too? Can you check your timestamps? Does your pulse line up with ours? The answers come back slowly. Yes, yes, yes. The room changes. Because now it's no longer one data set. It's a pattern shared across the planet. The brightness of the object rises, drops, then rises again, not randomly, on schedule. The pulses are evenly spaced, Not perfectly loud, not perfectly silent. Just enough to be seen if you know where to look. Someone overlays the curves from different observatories. They align, not approximately, exactly. The peaks sit on top of each other like they were copied and pasted. That shouldn't happen. Light travels fast, but observation doesn't. Different telescopes sample at different times. Different atmospheres interfere differently. Some noise is expected, but this is synchronized, down to the second. A quiet sentence slips out of someone's mouth. That's not noise. No one disagrees. They check for interference. Satellites, solar flares, instrument drift. Nothing explains it. The pulse doesn't match Earth-based cycles. It doesn't match solar activity. It doesn't match anything known. It only matches itself. Over and over again, the object pulses against the void, a steady heartbeat in a silent place. And heartbeats make people uneasy because they imply rhythm. They imply intent. The scientists don't want to jump ahead. They know how dangerous that can be. So they slow down. They double-check everything. They reprocess raw data. They remove filters. They strip the signal to its bare bones. And still, the pulse remains. Not enhanced, not diminished. Just there. Someone asks the obvious question. Could it be rotating? That would explain periodic brightness changes, but rotation causes wobble. Rotation causes variation. This pulse doesn't wobble. It doesn't drift. It doesn't speed up or slow down. It ticks. Like a clock that never misses a beat. They calculate the interval. It's clean. Not a messy decimal. Not a rough estimate. A simple number. Too simple. Nature loves fractions. This feels designed. The word stays unspoken. Because once you say it, you can't take it back. They try to provoke the pulse. They change observation angles. They wait for the object to move farther away. They expect distortion. Instead, the pulse adapts. Still visible. Still timed. Like it knows it's being watched. That thought makes someone uncomfortable. They push it aside. This is science, not stories. But stories have a way of creeping in. When facts stop behaving, a new idea surfaces quietly. What if it's reflecting something else? Not sunlight, not starlight. Something emitted, something internal. The room doesn't react right away, because that idea opens a door no one is ready to walk through. Internal emission means energy. Energy means source. Source means structure. And structure means they stop there. The pulses continue, each one gentle, almost polite, not demanding attention, just present. It's not a scream into space. It's not a beacon blazing at full power. If it's a signal, it's a whisper. That makes it worse, because whispers are meant for those who are listening. A researcher compares the pulse timing to known natural oscillations. Nothing matches. They compare it to known artificial signals. Still nothing exact, but the resemblance is closer. Closer than anyone is comfortable admitting. The pulses don't carry information. At least, not yet. No obvious encoding. No modulation. Just rhythm. Pure rhythm. As if the object is clearing its throat. As if it's saying, I am here. The sun fades behind it now. The object moves deeper into darkness. And still, the pulse continues. Unchanged by distance. Unfazed by shadow. Someone asks quietly, Why keep pulsing when no one asked, no one answers? Because that question isn't scientific, it's human. Late at night, one observatory records a brief dropout. For a moment, the pulse vanishes. Relief flickers. Maybe it was all a fluke. Maybe it's finally breaking down. Then the signal returns. Same timing, same rhythm. As if it noticed the silence and corrected it. That moment changes everything. Because randomness doesn't correct itself. The data is archived carefully. Access restricted. Language softened. Words like periodic anomaly are used. But behind the careful phrasing, unease grows. Because anomalies don't synchronize globally. Anomalies don't maintain timing across weeks. Anomalies don't feel intentional. This does. The object continues its journey, unbothered by the weight of interpretation. It doesn't speed up. It doesn't slow down. It just pulses against the endless dark. A quiet thought spreads through the scientific community, unspoken, shared only in glances and pauses. If this is a signal, then it wasn't sent recently. It's been traveling, waiting, passing through space until something noticed, and now something has. Us. The pulse doesn't change. It doesn't react to our awareness. If it's a message, it's not conversational, it's declarative. A statement, not a question. The night ends. The screens go dark, but the rhythm stays behind, echoing in memory. Because once you see a pattern like this, you can't unsee it. The universe no longer feels silent. It feels measured, timed, alive with quiet structure. And as the object moves farther away, still pulsing, still steady, one final question settles in. If this really is a signal, then what happens when it stops? And more importantly, was it ever meant for us? Or did we simply stumble into the path of something that was never meant to be found at all? The universe is cold, almost unimaginably cold. And because of that, heat tells the truth. You can hide light. You can scatter dust. You can play tricks with reflection. But heat is honest. It reveals what something is doing, even when it says nothing at all. That's why the infrared data matters. That's why, when the thermal readings arrive, the room goes quiet again. At first, the graphs look normal. A slow rise in temperature as the object leaves the sun behind. Then, a gradual cooling as distance increases. That's what physics predicts. That's what everyone expects. But someone notices a detail that doesn't fit. The temperature isn't changing smoothly. It's stepping. Up, pause, up again. Then later, down. Pause, down again. Not flowing like a wave. Not fading like embers, but moving in blocks. Discrete, measured, as if the object is deciding how warm it wants to be. Someone zooms in. The steps are clear. Flat lines, then sudden shifts. Flat again. Nature doesn't do that. Not without phase changes. Not without explosions or fractures. This object shows none of that. No outgassing. No surface disruption. Just temperature control without visible effort. Infrared instruments are sensitive. They don't imagine patterns. They detect energy exchange. And this exchange feels intentional. The word thermal regulation appears on a screen. It shouldn't. That phrase belongs to biology, to machines, not to rocks drifting through space. A senior analyst shakes their head. There has to be another explanation. Everyone wants that to be true. They run comparisons. Rotating asteroids, metal-rich bodies, objects with insulating dust layers. None of them match this behavior. Those objects heat unevenly. They spike. They lag. They overshoot. This one doesn't. It stays within a narrow range, almost like it's protecting something. That thought makes someone uncomfortable. They push it away. This is not about protection. This is about physics. But physics is starting to feel thin. The sun is far behind now. Solar input is dropping fast. Temperatures should fall rapidly. Instead, they don't. The object cools slowly, carefully, as if conserving energy, as if heat matters to it. Someone overlays the thermal data with the pulse data from earlier. The alignment is subtle but present. When the pulse strengthens, temperature stabilizes. When the pulse weakens, temperature shifts. No one speaks for a long moment because correlation invites questions, and questions invites conclusions. They don't want conclusions yet. They want distance, so they test for errors. Sensor drift, calibration bias, background radiation. Every excuse is examined, every escape route explored. Nothing breaks the pattern. The object isn't just passively cooling, it's managing the process. That's the word no one wants to use. Managing. Management implies choice. Choice implies agency. Agency implies something more than matter. The room feels smaller now, not because of fear, but because of awareness. One scientist stares at the infrared map. The object glows softly, not hot, not cold, balanced. A thought slips through their mind before they can stop it. That's how spacecraft behave. Thermal systems, radiators, heat sinks designed to survive extremes. They don't say it out loud, but others are thinking it too, because the resemblance is impossible to ignore. The object doesn't dump heat all at once. It releases it in intervals, like opening and closing a valve, silently, efficiently, as if it knows the environment and adapts. Someone raises a careful question. If it's regulating temperature, what is it protecting? No one answers, because that question crosses a line. And once crossed, there's no turning back. The data continues to arrive, night after night. The pattern holds. No decay, no breakdown, no randomness, just quiet control. This isn't survival by chance. This is survival by design. And design is dangerous territory, because design suggests intent. Intent suggests origin. Origin suggests purpose. And purpose suggests we are not alone in this story. The object doesn't respond to observation. It doesn't change when watched. It doesn't accelerate or hide. It simply continues, regulating, passing, unconcerned. That indifference is chilling, because if it were reacting to us, at least we'd be acknowledged. Instead, it behaves like something doing its job, something with a function, unaffected by curiosity. The sun grows smaller behind it. The object drifts into deeper space. Still warm, still stable, still controlled. One observer finally breaks the silence. Non-living things don't do this. It's not an accusation. It's a fact. Rocks don't manage heat. Debris doesn't self-regulate. Ice doesn't choose when to melt. Unless Unless it's not just ice. Unless it's not just rock. Unless the categories we're using are too small. The realization doesn't arrive all at once. It settles, like dust after an explosion. Slow, heavy, unavoidable. This object has passed every natural stress test. Heat, radiation, vacuum. And instead of degrading, it adapts. Quietly, efficiently, without signal, without announcement. Just behavior. And behavior is the hardest thing to explain away. Because behavior implies rules. Rules imply systems. Systems imply construction. The data is archived with care. Language softened again. Unusual thermal pattern. Stepwise temperature modulation. Words chosen to avoid the obvious. But the obvious doesn't go away. It waits. Late that night, someone replays the infrared timeline, watching the glow rise. Pause, fall, pause. It feels wrong. Not threatening. Not hostile. Just not empty. The universe is full of dead things, cold things, random things. This doesn't feel dead. It feels deliberate. And the most unsettling part, it's doing all of this in silence. No sound, no message, no explanation, just control, which raises a question no one is ready to answer. If something out there can regulate itself without life, without biology, then what exactly does non-living even mean anymore? The object continues on, cooling, balanced, unbroken, and as it fades into the dark, well, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. This is no longer about what the object is made of. It's about what it does. And what it does doesn't fit the universe we thought we understood. The silence deepens, the data grows heavier, and the next chapter will ask the question everyone is now avoiding. If this object can control heat, what else can it control? At first, the disagreement feels small, easy to dismiss. One instrument reports a slight change in brightness, another doesn't. One sensor sees a temperature shift, another shows stability. That happens sometimes. Space is messy. Instruments are imperfect, so no one panics. They do what they always do. They recalibrate, they cross-check, they assume the problem is human. But then the contradictions grow. And that's when it becomes harder to ignore. Optical telescopes report a smooth surface, clean, uniform, almost featureless. Infrared sensors, watching the same object at the same time, tell a different story. They see variation, edges that warm faster, zones that cool slower, as if the object isn't one thing, but many. Radar data adds another layer. Instead of a simple reflection, the signal scatters in odd ways. Not chaotic, directional, like it's choosing how to answer the ping. Someone frowns. Those returns shouldn't look like that. They overlay the datasets. Optical, infrared, radar. They don't align, not the way they should. It's as if each instrument is seeing a different version of the same object. Not wrong, just different. At first, the assumption is simple. Different wavelengths reveal different properties. That's normal. But this goes further, much further. The object doesn't just look different, it behaves differently, depending on how it's observed. When watched in visible light, it appears calm, stable, predictable. Under infrared, it shows internal structure. Under radar, it becomes ambiguous, almost evasive. Someone uses a word they don't like. Context dependent. That phrase belongs in psychology, not astronomy. They try simultaneous observation. Multiple sensors running together. Same moment, same position, same target. The disagreement remains. Not random, consistent, repeatable. That's the problem. Errors don't repeat this cleanly. Perception becomes the question, not the object. Because if the object was simple, every tool would tell the same story. But they don't. And that suggests something unsettling. What if the object isn't changing? What if it's responding? That thought lands softly, then refuses to leave. Someone suggests a rotating surface with complex geometry that could explain angle-dependent readings. The math is run. The model fails. The contradictions are too sharp, too selective. Another suggestion follows. A cloud of debris. A swarm. Multiple fragments moving together. That would confuse instruments. But debris clouds spread. They blur. They lose coherence. This object doesn't. It remains tight, defined, unified, as if whatever differences exist are intentional. The room grows tense, not fearful, focused, because this is the point where science becomes uncomfortable, when observation itself seems unreliable. One researcher says quietly, "It's like it knows how it's being looked at." No one laughs, because everyone has thought the same thing. The idea is disturbing, but elegant. Different sensors interact differently with matter. Light, heat, radio waves. If an object understood those interactions, it could shape what we see. Not hide completely, just control the narrative. That's a dangerous thought, because manipulation implies awareness. Awareness implies intelligence. And intelligence implies purpose. They test one more thing. They adjust observation timing. Short bursts, long exposures. The object's response shifts. Subtly, but measurably, as if it adapts to scrutiny. Not instantly, not dramatically, just enough to stay ambiguous. One scientist stares at the combined data and exhales. This thing doesn't want to be pinned down. Pinned down. Like a suspect. Like a story that refuses to settle. They don't say deliberate. They don't say camouflage. But the words circle the room, unsaid, heavy. Someone else counters. We're projecting. They might be right. Humans are good at seeing intention where none exists. It's a survival trait. But projection usually falls apart under repetition. This doesn't. The disagreement between instruments persists day after day. No convergence. No resolution. Just layers of partial truth. Like the object is showing masks, not hiding fully. Just never revealing everything at once. That's when a realization quietly forms. If perception changes the result, then certainty is impossible. And uncertainty is the perfect shield. The object continues its journey, still pulsing faintly, still regulating heat, still holding its shape. But now, it feels less like something being observed, and more like something managing observation. That reversal matters, because science depends on trust. Trust that instruments reflect reality. Trust that data reveals truth. But what if the truth adapts? What if observation is part of the system? The idea spreads silently, not spoken in meetings, not written in reports, but felt, in pauses, in glances, in the way questions are asked and left unanswered. Late one night, an engineer reviews the logs. They notice something subtle. Whenever sensor disagreement peaks, the object's pulse weakens. When agreement returns, the pulse strengthens. It's not definitive, but it's there. Correlation again. Always correlation. Never proof. Proof would be too loud. This feels careful. The engineer closes the file, sits back, and for the first time, they don't feel watched. They feel measured, like part of an experiment. The object doesn't react emotionally. It doesn't threaten. It doesn't announce itself. It simply behaves in ways that keep us guessing. And that might be the most intelligent move of all, because confusion slows conclusions. Ambiguity prevents action. Silence invites debate. The object leaves room for doubt, and doubt is powerful. The instruments continue to argue. The data continues to disagree. And slowly, a shift occurs. Scientists stop asking, "What is it?" and start asking, "What does it want us to see?" That question doesn't belong in astronomy, but it's here now, unavoidable. The object drifts farther away, harder to observe, easier to lose. And maybe that's the point. Because if this is manipulation, it's subtle. If this is camouflage, it's imperfect. If this is coincidence, it's persistent. The contradiction remains unresolved. No conclusions are drawn, no announcements made, but something fundamental has changed. Observation no longer feels passive. It feels interactive. And that realization lingers long after the screens go dark. Because if this object can present different faces, then the universe may not be as honest as we thought. Or worse, it may be watching how we choose to look. And in the next chapter, that possibility will no longer feel theoretical. It will feel intentional. It doesn't start with a declaration. No one stands up and says it. No meeting is called. No paper is written. The idea appears the way dangerous ideas always do, in silence. In pauses between sentences. In looks that last a second too long. In questions that don't get answered. Because by now, everyone feels it. The data isn't just strange anymore. It's consistent. And consistency changes things. Random events don't behave this way. Coincidences don't survive this many tests. Errors don't repeat with discipline. Something else is happening. Late one night, a small group stays behind after a routine review. The room is dim. Coffee cups are cold. Screens glow softly. No recording. No agenda. Just people who trust each other enough to be honest. One of them finally speaks. What if it's not natural? No one reacts. No gasps. No laughter. Just silence. Because everyone has already crossed that thought alone. Another voice follows. Not alien life. Not biology. A pause. Artificial. The word lands heavy. Not because it's loud, but because it explains too much. Machine-like behavior. Thermal regulation. Controlled pulses. Selective interaction with sensors. These aren't proof, but together they form a shape. A shape no one wants to name. Someone shakes their head. That would mean design. Yes. Another adds quietly. Design without an origin we can trace. That's worse, because even ancient machines come from somewhere. Factories, civilizations, stars. This object doesn't point back to anything. No home, no trail, no past, just function. Pure function. That's what unsettles them. Because function implies purpose, and purpose implies intention. The group doesn't jump to conclusions. They know better. They build a framework instead. They call it a hypothesis. Safe word. Artificial doesn't mean hostile. Artificial doesn't mean intelligent. Artificial just means not accidental. They list what they know. The object survives perihelion unchanged. It regulates heat. It pulses with precision. It interacts differently with different forms of observation. It follows a trajectory that defies probability. None of these alone prove anything. Together, they whisper. Someone finally says what everyone is thinking. If it's artificial, it doesn't behave like a probe. That's true. Probes communicate. They transmit. They adjust. This object doesn't. It doesn't greet. It doesn't explain. It doesn't even acknowledge. It just passes through, which raises a darker idea. What if it's not here for us? That thought changes the tone, because most speculation assumes relevance, that we matter, that we are the audience. But machines don't care who's watching, if the task doesn't involve them. What if this object is doing something else? Something unrelated to Earth, unrelated to the sun, unrelated to us, and we just happened to notice. The idea spreads quietly. No emails, no official language, just whispers, careful phrasing in reports, unusual coherence, non-random behavior, possible artificial constraints, words chosen to suggest without declaring, because declaration brings consequences. Funding, scrutiny, public attention, fear. And fear travels fast. Someone brings up history, how past discoveries were dismissed, how strange data was ignored until it wasn't. They remember how long it took to accept other impossible ideas. Planets around other stars, gravitational waves, black holes. Reality has embarrassed certainty before. Still, this feels different. Those discoveries expanded nature. This one threatens to redefine it. Because if artificial structures can drift through interstellar space, unannounced, unclaimed, then intelligence may be older, quieter, and far less interested in us than we assume. The group agrees on one thing. They will not rush. They will not speculate publicly. They will let the data speak. But the data is already speaking, and it's not saying what they hoped. As days pass, the idea leaks. Not through papers, through conversations, at conferences, in hallways, over late-night calls. Carefully, always carefully. No one wants to be the first to say it out loud. But soon, everyone knows someone who has heard it. The artificial hypothesis, spoken like a rumor, handled like a fragile object, because once you accept it, you can't go back. If this object is artificial, then someone made it. And if someone made it, they either still exist or they don't. Both possibilities are terrifying. One suggests presence, the other suggests relics. Machines outlasting their makers, drifting endlessly, executing forgotten purposes. That thought chills the room, because it reframes the object, not as a visitor, not as a message, but as infrastructure. Something built long ago, passing through systems that didn't exist when it was made. Uncaring, unaware, just working. Someone whispers that would make us ants on a highway. No one argues, because highways don't notice ants. They don't slow down. They don't explain themselves. They just exist. The object continues on its path, growing fainter, harder to study. The window is closing, and with it, certainty. There's pressure now, not from governments, not from media, from time, because once it's gone, and whatever it was will remain unresolved. Some researchers want to speak, others want silence. They compromise. Careful language, measured release, nothing definitive, nothing sensational. But even caution carries weight. The public doesn't hear the word artificial. They hear something else, unexplained. And unexplained invites imagination. Behind closed doors, fear grows. Not fear of invasion, fear of insignificance. Because the artificial hypothesis doesn't place us at the center. It places us at the edge. Observers of something vast and indifferent. The object doesn't change course, doesn't react to the speculation, doesn't accelerate or hide. It simply continues, which may be the most unsettling part. If it were aware, it doesn't care. If it's not aware, it still behaves better than chaos should allow. Either way, it breaks the story we tell ourselves, that we are early, that we are special, that the universe is waiting. This object suggests something else, that the universe has been busy for a long time, and we are late, very late. The group meets one last time before the object fades beyond useful range. No conclusions are reached, only acknowledgements. They agree on one thing. If the artificial hypothesis is true, then discovery isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of humility, because machines don't announce themselves. They don't seek approval. They don't explain purpose. They just exist, as evidence that intelligence once was, or still is, somewhere beyond us. The object slips deeper into darkness. Its pulse weakens. Its heat stabilizes. Its contradictions persist. And the idea follows it, quietly spreading, unchallenged, unresolved. Because once you see machine-like behavior in the stars, you can never look at silence the same way again. And the next question is no longer scientific. It's existential. If this was artificial, then how much of the universe around us has already been built? Without us ever noticing, the data doesn't change. But the people reading it do. At first, the reaction is intellectual. Curiosity, debate, careful disagreement. That's how scientists are trained to respond. But as days pass, something shifts. Behind closed doors, the tone hardens, voices lower, pauses grow longer, because disbelief can only protect you for so long. Eventually, unease takes its place. Meetings that once felt routine now feel heavy. Every graph carries weight. Every sentence is chosen carefully. No one wants to say the wrong thing, not because they fear being wrong, but because they fear being right. A senior researcher leans back during a review. They've seen decades of anomalies. False alarms, strange comets, bad instruments. This feels different. They don't say that. They don't have to. Everyone can see it in their face. Someone asks the question everyone has been avoiding. If this isn't natural, what does that make us? The room doesn't answer right away. Because that question isn't about the object. It's about identity. For centuries, humans have placed themselves carefully in the universe, not at the center anymore, but still special, still early, still rare. This object threatens that comfort. Because if something artificial can drift through our solar system unnoticed, then maybe the universe isn't quiet. Maybe we just haven't been listening properly. Disbelief fades, not all at once, but in layers. First, the denial cracks, then the jokes stop, then the language changes. Words like unlikely turn into concerning, unusual becomes persistent, and finally, silence fills the gaps. Some researchers grow defensive. They argue harder, push back, demand stricter proof. They're not wrong. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. But others feel something deeper, a quiet humility. Because even without proof, the implications are undeniable. If this object is artificial, then intelligence is not rare, not new, not fragile. It may be old, patient, distributed across the galaxy or beyond. That thought lands differently for everyone. For some, it's thrilling. For others, it's terrifying. Not because of invasion, not because of threat, but because of irrelevance. One person says it out loud during a private discussion. What if we missed thousands like this? No one answers, because the silence feels like agreement. Our instruments are new. Our reach is short. We've only been listening for a cosmic heartbeat. What if the universe has been humming this whole time, and we only just tuned in? That idea changes how people look at the sky, not as a frontier, but as a library we barely know how to enter. The pressure builds, not from outside, from inside. Some feel responsibility to warn, to prepare. Others feel restraint, to protect the public from speculation. Both sides believe they're doing the right thing, and that tension fractures rooms. Old colleagues speak carefully around each other. Friendships strain under the weight of possibility, because belief is no longer abstract. It's personal. One researcher admits something quietly. I used to think we'd know if something was out there. They stop. Now they're not so sure, because this object didn't announce itself. It didn't shine brighter. It didn't send a greeting. It didn't care. It simply passed through, and we barely noticed. That's the most unsettling part. Not that something might exist, but that it doesn't need us. That realization humbles even the most confident minds. Because science has always assumed observation leads to understanding. But what if observation only scratches the surface? What if reality doesn't care whether it's understood? Late at night, some researchers stare at old data, re-examine past anomalies, signals once dismissed, curves once ignored. They wonder how many stories ended too early, how many questions were silenced by comfort. The object becomes a mirror, not reflecting light, but reflecting limitation. Our limits, our assumptions, our blindness. And blindness hurts more than fear, because fear can be confronted. Blindness has to be admitted. In one closed meeting, a young scientist speaks up. What if this isn't rare? The room stills. What if this is common and we just don't recognize it? That idea settles slowly. Because if artificial structures are common, then the universe isn't waiting to be explored. It's already built, layered, occupied by things that don't announce themselves and don't explain. That reframes everything. Exploration becomes archaeology. Discovery becomes interpretation. And humanity becomes late to the conversation. Some feel small, others feel inspired, but everyone feels changed. Because once that door opens, you can't close it. The object continues to fade. Its pulse weakens. Its data thins. The chance to know more slips away. And with it, certainty. That absence hurts, because humans crave answers. But the universe rarely offers closure. In the end, no consensus is reached. No declaration made. No press conference held. Just a quiet acknowledgement. Something passed through our home, and we didn't understand it. That truth lingers long after the object is gone. In classrooms, in observatories, in the minds of people who will never say it publicly, but will never forget it privately. Because if this object was not natural, then the cosmos is not empty. And if it is not empty, then our place within it is smaller than we imagined. Not insignificant, but not central. Observers, learners, latecomers. The data is archived. The meetings end. Life moves on. But something has shifted. A subtle awakening. A crack in certainty. A reminder that the universe does not exist to make sense to us. And that maybe, for the first time, we are beginning to understand that. As the chapter closes, one quiet thought remains. If we were blind before, what else is moving through the dark right now, unnoticed, unbothered, waiting for us to finally learn how to see? The next chapter doesn't bring comfort, it brings meaning. And meaning is far more dangerous. At some point, the data stops being the center of the conversation, not because it's finished, but because it's no longer enough. The graphs are still there, the curves, the pulses, the contradictions, but something has shifted. Quietly, the discussions change tone. Less about measurements, more about meaning. Because once you accept that the unknown might be structured, once you accept that it might be intentional, astronomy is no longer enough to hold the question. So the room changes, not physically, emotionally. Scientists begin asking things they were never trained to ask. Not what is it, but what does it mean? That's a dangerous turn, because meaning is slippery. Meaning belongs to philosophy, to history, to identity, and once it enters the room, it doesn't leave quietly. Someone says it during a late discussion. Maybe discovery isn't the right word anymore. No one interrupts, because everyone feels it. Discovery implies something waiting to be found. Passive, silent, unaware. This doesn't feel like that. This feels like contact without conversation, presence without permission, awareness without confirmation. Another voice adds, maybe this is an awakening. That word lands differently. Awakening doesn't mean answers. It means realization. It means seeing something that was always there and realizing you were blind to it. For centuries, humans looked at the sky and saw distance. Cold, empty, unconcerned. That belief shaped everything. Our myths, our science, our confidence. We assumed silence meant absence. But now, silence feels deliberate, and deliberation changes the relationship. The object didn't shout. It didn't glow brighter to be noticed. It didn't send a message written in our language. It simply behaved in ways that forced us to look closer. That's not how accidents work. That's how mirrors work. The unknown begins to feel intimate. Not close in distance, but close in relevance. Like something brushing past your shoulder in a dark room without touching you. You don't know what it is, but you feel it. Someone asks the question everyone has been circling. Are we observing it, or is it observing us? The room stays quiet, because the question reverses everything. Observation has always been our power. We look, we measure, we define. But if something out there behaves differently, depending on how it's observed, then observation is no longer neutral. It's interaction. And interaction implies relationship. That realization is unsettling. Not because it implies threat, but because it implies equality. Or worse, irrelevance. What if we're not the observers in this story? What if we're the environment, the background noise, the thing being passed through? That thought humbles even the most confident minds, because it strips away narrative control. It suggests the universe isn't waiting for us to catch up. It's already moving, already layered, already complex beyond our categories. One philosopher is invited into the discussion. Not officially, quietly. They listen to the data. They don't comment on the physics. They comment on the framing. You're assuming intention must involve you. They say, the room stiffens. What if intention exists without audience? That lands hard, because humans have always believed meaning requires witness. But machines don't need witnesses. Processes don't need approval. Systems don't need acknowledgement. They just operate. The object begins to feel less like a message and more like a sentence fragment, part of a story we don't have the language to read. And that's where discomfort turns into awe, because awe isn't fear, it's recognition of scale, of depth, of being outmatched not by power, but by context. Someone says something quietly. We keep asking if it's artificial. They pause. Maybe the real question is, what does natural even mean anymore? That question fractures the room, because nature was supposed to be the baseline, the safe category, the thing we understood. But if intelligence can become infrastructure, if purpose can drift without biology, if machines can outlive civilizations, then nature and artificial are no longer opposites. They're stages, continuations, expressions of the same cosmic process. That idea is too big to hold all at once, so people sit with it, silently, individually. Some feel small, others feel connected. Some feel grief for the comforting stories that are dying. Others feel wonder at the vastness opening up. The unknown no longer feels far away. It feels close, like it has always been here, just beyond our resolution. And now we're finally resolving it. Barely. The object continues to fade. Harder to track, less data, less clarity. And that loss feels symbolic, as if the universe offered a glimpse, then pulled back. Not cruelly, just neutrally, as if to say, this is all you get for now. That restraint feels intentional, but no one says that anymore. They don't need to, because intention has already reshaped the conversation. The shift is complete. This is no longer about finding aliens. It's not about invasion or contact. It's about perspective. about realizing that the universe may be full of systems that don't announce themselves, that don't care if they're understood, that move through stars the way weather moves through land, and we are just beginning to notice. One scientist summarizes it best, without meaning to. We used to think the universe was empty and waiting. They pause. Now it feels occupied. Occupied doesn't mean hostile. It means active, layered, busy with processes older than our species. That realization changes everything, because if the universe is occupied, then curiosity is no longer optional. Humility is no longer philosophical. It's necessary. The object disappears into darkness. No final signal, no closing statement, just absence. And absence invites reflection. The chapter ends not with fear, but with a quiet, profound question. If something out there can exist, act, and pass through our home without needing us at all, then what does it mean to be human? In a universe that doesn't revolve around observation, but around systems so vast they barely notice who's watching, the answer doesn't come. But the awakening has already happened. And once awake, you never look at the dark the same way again. Because now, when we look out into space, we don't just wonder what's out there. We wonder who's already been here and whether we are finally learning how to notice. The final chapter will not resolve this feeling. It will leave it where it belongs, inside us. It ends the way it began. Quietly, no explosion. No farewell, no final revelation, just absence. As the object moves beyond the reach of our strongest instruments, the pulses weaken, not suddenly, not dramatically. They soften, stretch, miss a beat, then another, until one night they don't return. The screens show flat lines, clean, empty silence. At first, no one believes it. They wait, recheck the timestamps, reboot the systems, run the data again. But silence holds. The rhythm that once pulsed against the void is gone, and with it, certainty. There is no moment of closure, no line you can point to and say, this is where it ended. It just fades, like footsteps swallowed by distance. The object continues outward, slipping into the dark between stars, still moving, still existing, but no longer speaking, if it ever was. In the days that follow, something strange happens. The tension dissolves, not because answers were found, but because there are none left to chase. The meetings slow down. The urgent calls stop. People return to routine. But routine feels thinner now, fragile, like a story everyone knows is incomplete. Some researchers feel relief. The unknown has passed. No danger revealed, no consequences triggered. Others feel something closer to grief, because mystery, once glimpsed, is hard to let go. The data is archived, carefully, quietly, labeled with neutral language. No dramatic titles, no conclusions, just files waiting. Because science doesn't close doors, it leaves them unlocked, and this door remains open. In private conversations, the questions return, not louder, deeper. Was it a message? If so, why so subtle? Why no reply? Why no clarity? Messages usually want to be understood. This didn't. Was it a machine? If so, who built it? And why send it through a system like ours? without stopping, without contact, without care. Machines are built for reasons. Even forgotten ones. Or was it something else entirely? A test? Not of technology, but of perception. A way to measure awareness, to see who notices, to see who asks, to see who is capable of doubt. That idea unsettles some people more than all the others because tests imply evaluation, and evaluation implies judgment. Others reject that completely. They say the universe doesn't test, it simply exists. Meaning is something humans impose. Maybe this was just a rare object, misunderstood, overinterpreted. Maybe the silence now proves that. Maybe. But the feeling doesn't go away, because absence can be louder than presence, especially after something has changed you. Weeks pass, the object is gone. The sky looks the same. Stars burn, planets turn. Nothing appears different. Yet, everything feels slightly altered, because now silence feels intentional. When astronomers look into the dark, they no longer see emptiness. They see possibility. Not hopeful possibility. Not fearful possibility. Just possibility. Layered, unfinished. The universe feels less like a stage and more like a system already in motion. One that doesn't pause when you look at it. One that doesn't explain itself. One that doesn't care if you understand. That realization settles slowly in classrooms, in observatories, in late-night thoughts no one writes down. People stop asking, will it come back? They start asking, how many have already passed? Because if this object could cross our home unnoticed for so long, then detection isn't about rarity. It's about readiness. Maybe the truth doesn't return on a schedule. Maybe it returns only when perception catches up. The silence after the object feels different from the silence before. Before, it felt empty. Now, it feels full. Full of unanswered questions. Full of systems we don't recognize. Full of motion we can't yet interpret. The universe hasn't changed. We have. That might be the quietest consequence of all. Some nights a researcher stares at archived graphs. The pulse data, the broken light curve, the thermal steps. They don't analyze them anymore. They just look, like reading a letter written in a language you almost understand. Almost. There is no conclusion, no final sentence, no proof. Only a lingering uncertainty. Was this object a message? A machine? A relic? A mirror? Or something even stranger? Something that doesn't fit human categories at all? And perhaps the most haunting question remains. Was it meant to be noticed? Or did we simply interrupt something that was never meant to look back? The universe offers no answer. It never does. It just continues. Quiet, vast, unconcerned. And that silence is no longer comforting, but it isn't terrifying either. It's honest, because the truth may not be dramatic. It may not arrive with lights or language. It may come and go, without permission, without explanation, leaving only a shift behind, a subtle change in how we see. The object is gone, but the awakening remains, and once awakened, you can't unsee the dark, because now every quiet stretch of space carries a question. Not what is out there, but what has already passed through, while we were still learning how to look. And maybe that is the final truth. Not that we were contacted, not that we were warned, but that the universe briefly revealed itself, not as empty, not as hostile, but as something vast, structured, and indifferent to being understood. The silence returns, the stars keep burning, and somewhere beyond reach, whatever passed through our home continues on, unchanged. Uninterested, leaving us behind with the one thing it never took away, curiosity. And that curiosity will echo longer than any pulse ever could, because the question it left us with may never be answered, and yet it may never need to be.